Listen to your favorite shows live and on demand 24/7. Download the 77 WABC mobile app now. This is The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
They're running a strange program, y'all.
Now, here's Frank Morano.
This is The Other Side of Midnight. I'm Frank Morano. You remember the QAnon shaman, the Capitol rioter Jacob Chansley, who I believe is now running for Congress in Arizona. But he was the one with the horns, the QAnon shaman. Jacob, I'm sure this will come as a great relief to you. Jacob Chansley, known as the QAnon shaman for his elaborate outfit on January 6th, 2021, will get back the spear that he carried inside the building, as well as his horned, coyote-tailed headdress. That ruling from a judge yesterday. Judge Royce Lamberth's order resolves one of the residual questions of the riot related to some of its most indelible images. The Justice Department in recent weeks had been at odds with Chansley on who should continue to possess the items. The federal government had seized them around his arrest, but Chansley has served much of his criminal sentence for the felony charge related to the riot. Prosecutors had tried to convince the judge they needed to keep the items as evidence in case Chansley tries to challenge his conviction again. The Justice Department floated to the court the idea of keeping the items as part of a civil forfeiture, but hadn't taken steps to do that. So the judge said, nope, he gets to have them back. Well, that's good. Why should the government get to keep his QAnon shaman gear? I say after unless you made an effort to properly claim this through restitution, he should absolutely have it back. All right. I want to give an update on a story that has gotten a lot of attention, and that has to do with this boxer from Algeria that has been vilified in some quarters for people saying she's not really a woman, where the only evidence of her not being a woman so far comes from the International Boxing Association, which claims she failed a gender test. That's it. That's it. And as it stands now, she qualifies to compete in boxing as a woman in the Olympics. And she spoke out yesterday about the controversy that she's been involved in. And I thought her message was very important. She's basically asking people to refrain from bullying, is what she said yesterday in France.
This is the question I'm asking myself.
By the way, this is, of course, I should go without being said, but I'll say it. This is through a translator.
This is the question I'm asking myself. Why now? Why is this happening now? I don't know. What's important is that I came here with a focus on my goal, which is the Olympics. Now I'm in the semi-final. God willing, I will be up to the challenge in the semi-finals. And God willing, I will be able to keep it under control and pass these 2 stages and the semifinals. I send my message to all the people around the world to uphold the Olympics principles, according to the Olympics Charter, and refrain from bullying all the athletes because this thing has effect, massive effects. It can destroy people. It can kill people's thoughts, spirit, and mind, and can divide people. And because of that, I ask them to refrain from bullying, and that's it. I'm in contact with my family 2 days a week. I hope they weren't affected deeply. They are worried about me. God willing, this crisis will culminate in a gold medal, and that would be the best response.
So, Khalif, who was dragged into controversy over gender eligibility criteria at the Olympics, this is the first time that she's spoken out since the games began. She and Taiwan's Lin Yu-ting have been subjected to all sorts of abuse on social media and all sorts of inaccurate online speculation about their gender, even though the International Olympic Committee has said they both have met all the criteria and there's no question that they're women. So Khalif said in this interview, I sent a message to all the people of the world to uphold the Olympic principles and to the Olympic Charter, to refrain from bullying all athletes because this has effects, massive effects. It can destroy people. It can kill people's thoughts, spirit, and mind. It can divide people. And because of that, I asked them to refrain from bullying. I think that's an important message. So Khalif and Yu-ting have both advanced to the semifinals at the Olympics, ensuring that they'll at least win bronze medals. So the International Boxing Association, which I have to confess, until David brought this up yesterday, I don't think I knew that they were predominantly a Russian organization. If I did, I had forgotten that. But the primarily Russian, and I'm not mentioning that to feed into anyone's Russophobia. God knows, I think it's terrible that Russia's been excluded from the Russian, from the Olympic Games. But given the fact that they don't get to participate in the Olympics this year, it wouldn't exactly be a shock that entities within the Russian sporting community have a little bit of an axe to grind with the Olympics and may want to rain on the Olympic parade to some extent. So the Russian-backed International Boxing Association brought the issue to surface last week. So the IBA, which is not recognized by the IOC and has no role in Olympic boxing, they stripped Lin of the gold and Khalif of the bronze in the 2023 World Championship medals after the organization claimed they failed gender eligibility tests. We don't know what those tests were. We don't know how accurate they were. We don't have any, they haven't released those tests. But Thomas Bach, the president of the Olympics, or the International Olympic Committee, said there's never been any doubt that both Lin and Khalif are cisgender women. And he urged, quote, really everyone to respect these women, to respect them as women, as human beings. I agree. And look, I don't want to repeat all of what I said on yesterday's show, but I am not an advocate at all of people that are born men and then go through a transition being able to compete with women in competitive sports. Not at all. But that's not what happened here. These are women that were born women and have lived their entire lives as women. So for people to be throwing shade at them, I think is really just inappropriate. All right. On to another story that I find sad and peculiar. A woman said she was humiliated after trying to board a flight from Los Angeles, but was prevented from doing so due to a rare skin condition. Now, maybe it's because I have psoriasis and I can empathize with people that have, skin issues. But Brianna Solari is a nurse from Sacramento. She had flown to LA to undergo a specialized surgery for tumors caused by a genetic condition called neurofibromatosis. The condition causes non-cancerous tumors to grow all over the skin and nervous system. And on her return flight home on August 1st, Solari headed to the Hollywood Burbank Airport and made sure to cover up with a face mask and headband. She had a ticket for a Southwest airline flight. But as Solari boarded the plane and sat down, she was suddenly approached by an airline crew member who asked her to leave. He said there were some concerns about whether or not she had any communicable disease. And he specifically mentioned chickenpox. And if you look at her face, I mean, it's sad. I can't imagine living with this. It looks like she's got lesions all over her neck and her face and her, her torso, and or on her forehead, it could look like she's got really bad acne, but it looks worse than acne. It does look like chickenpox. So she was then taken to the boarding gate where she explained her rare medical condition. As far as I'm concerned, that's when it should have ended. Once she explains her medical condition, I mean, first of all, what business is it of the airline? I mean, I guess they have a duty to protect the other passengers. But she told the airline employees she just received surgery and her condition was not contagious. She offered to show the discharge paperwork from the hospital, but she was denied. She was told she wouldn't be allowed to reboard the flight until she was examined by emergency medical services at the airport. Solari called her own doctor's office and asked them to email a letter of medical clearance, which she eventually received. After this whole ordeal, this woman waited 5 hours to be placed on another flight. Can you imagine? First of all, of course, this is embarrassing. Of course, this is humiliating. But can you imagine the inconvenience of this? Just to be delayed in an airport to wait around 5 more hours because they don't believe you that you're not contagious? I think this is awful. Absolutely awful. Here was Brianna Solari.
Believe it when people say, I had surgery and I shouldn't have to discuss this with airline employees who are not medical professionals.
Exactly. She said she had to give her phone to the employees and they read the clearance letter to the airport physician. Then they said, oh, well, okay, she can go. And she got on a flight 5 hours later. I think, according to federal regulations, if anybody's concerned about that, passengers with a medical condition cannot be denied air travel unless their condition can be determined to pose a direct threat. So I think it's awful the way this woman was treated. Absolutely awful. Now, maybe in an era of COVID and swine flu and bird flu and Ebola, maybe you want the airlines to be a little bit more cautious if they see a woman that looks like she might have chickenpox or something boarding an airplane. Once she explains the situation, which, again, nobody should have to do in terms of violating their own privacy and their own medical issues, of their own medical records, the discussion should be over. What do you think? 646-720-0635, 646-720-0635. That is the question.
A question. Since before your sun burned hot in space and before your race was born, I have awaited a question.
California nurse Brianna Solari kicked off a Southwest flight over her medical condition. Humiliated. Kicked off a flight, says she was discriminated against because of her skin condition as she tried to get home following surgery. Neurofibromatosis is a genetic disorder that causes these non-cancerous tumors to grow in the nervous system and skin across the body. It's bad enough that she's had to deal with this. She lacks an enzyme, which is a tumor suppressor. So tumors grow along nerves and can be tiny little pinpoint tumors, or they can be enormous. Some of them can be very disfiguring, and she's trying to get help. and she's got to deal with explaining this to the airline. Ugh. I mean, I feel so bad for this woman. I really do. 646-720-0635. She was ultimately placed on a new flight back to Sacramento, but that didn't change her feelings toward the airline. She said, I don't think I'll ever fly them again. I think this could have been handled much more professionally. They should have waited until they had all the information before making a decision that ultimately impacted my day, my flight, my traveling, and my overall perspective on Southwest. So I think she's exactly right. Absolutely right. Matt Blaze, you have an opinion on this whole matter?
Yeah, I feel bad for her that she had to go through that. At the same time, I kind of think like she might have been able to see this ahead of time and kind of been a little proactive and said, hey, listen, I'm going to go on this flight, go to the airline and say, I have this condition. Here's the note from my doctor. It's not contagious. I know it looks a little weird to people, but I want to make sure there's no issues. You know what I mean?
But I feel like she did a lot of that. For starters, one, she was masked. And second, I guess, she showed the discharge papers from the hospital.
Right. And I think at that point, too, I mean, the airport doctor is going to be able to clear her, or the EMTs or whoever's in the airport is going to know about this medical condition. And they have to go, oh, okay, you're good to go now. How they would know in the first place? But I think, yes, at that point, they should have just said, here's my discharge papers. Here's what it is. Let me go. And at the same time, like I said, if she would have maybe taken those steps ahead of time, she could have avoided the whole situation. That's what I think.
All right. Well, maybe. I still think. I
agree with what you're saying. Once she gave the papers and showed them, hey, look, this is what it is, that should have been the end of it. It should have been maybe a 10, 15-minute thing, and that should have been
right. Not a 5-hour
for 5
ordeal.
hours.
Yeah,
No.
exactly.
No.
You can see why Southwest is such a mess, and they have to resort to changing their whole seating policy. All right. If you want to comment, I'd love to hear from you. 646-720-0635. In the meantime, we will hear from the best newsman in all the business, Noam Laden, straight ahead.
The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano. It's The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
This is the Eagles. Take it to the limit. Unlike the dude in The Big Lebowski, I am a fan of the Eagles. This, though, is a birthday bumper music selection by Erin Sykes. Erin Sykes is just a tremendous person. She is not only a real beauty, but one of the great television and radio guests of all time. And I think now she's the chief economist and a big real estate salesperson with this big real estate firm in Miami. I think it's Nest Seekers. But she's great. You might see her on Fox Business from time to time. It's been a while since we had her on this program. But I think she's focusing mostly on real estate. But today is her birthday. And happy birthday, Erin Sykes. Hopefully it is a good one. Now, a man who has been chronicling our wall-to-wall dragonfly or stormfly or drainfly drama is our news director, Noam Laden, who has some updates for us.
Stand by for the other side of Midnight's news.
From New York City, the other Side of Midnight and its affiliated stations present national and international news with Frank Morano and news director Noam Laden. Their summary of the world news and personal comments. Get the rest of the story.
Hey, Noam.
Good morning, Frank. It's funny, I actually do have an update on the sewer flies or whatever you want to call them, the drain
Give us the
flies.
latest. Give us the latest.
They are all coming, they think, from downstairs where they're doing construction. They're building a restaurant, I think, below us.
Really?
That's what it looks like.
Oh.
I don't know that for a fact.
That's nice.
But there's
Okay.
a sign that suggests that's what it might be.
What kind of restaurant?
Don't know.
Okay.
I can get that for you. But there was.
Thank you.
I just saw pictures of food when I was walking by, but I didn't stop to see what it was.
All
So
right.
it looks like some sort of restaurant. But about 10 days ago, there was an exterminator in here, sprayed all around, told us there won't be any smell because people hate when they have the smell on the stuff that they spray. So he's spraying around and we're like, okay, whatever it is we're inhaling, we can't smell it. He's going to come back today because apparently it didn't work, and I guess they're going to use a more intense spray, hopefully, that will kill whatever is flying around the office.
Okay, well, that's something. So what Matt Blaze has done is he set out this cup of coffee and put sugar in it to
Right.
attract it. But I said, well, what good is it going to do if it, Matt Blaze maintains they're just going to go in there and drown. I said, well, they might just sample the sugar and then leave. So what I have done
Right.
is I have poured into that coffee cup rubbing alcohol so that if they drink it, they'll die,
Smart.
and more sugar in there to attract them even more.
Wow. Okay.
So-
Well, do you want me to give you an update on how you're doing?
Yeah, sure. Tell us
Okay,
how many
let's see.
fly carcasses you see in there.
I see there's one flying. Oh, there's two flying on top of the cup as we speak. That's so nasty. And there's two that are dead in the coffee.
Only two. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are the two that I killed with the Morano method
The alcohol.
of killing. That's it. All right. We are just hours away from knowing who the vice presidential nominee is going to be for the Democratic Party. But I am sure that Noam Laden has some other news for us. And at 30 minutes after the hour, you're listening to The Other Side of Midnight. I'm Frank Morano. What else is in the news, Noam?
Remember, well, of course you remember, a number of years ago during the beginning of the pandemic when they forced us to put on masks, that there were rules, especially here in New York City or in public transit. No matter where you were, you had to be masked up. Well, fast forward to August 6th, 2024, last night, an area of New York, Long Island, Nassau County, a county in Long Island, passed what could be the first in the nation mask ban where you're not allowed to wear a mask in most places, that you'll be forced to take that mask off in what may be an incredibly hard bill to enforce. But this was all brought on by some legislators who said they were upset at these anti-Israel protesters who were masked up during protests, some of them on college campuses, but some took place on Long Island in New York. And they want to stop that from happening. People hiding behind these masks. These protesters, they say, should have to show their full face if they're out there protesting. So now, if you're caught protesting with a mask on, you could get a $1,000 fine on Long Island. They're going to sign this bill today. And maybe even jail time, depending on what takes place. But here's the problem, is how do you enforce this? You have to hand this over to the cops. They have to figure out, okay, is this person wearing this for health reasons? Is this person wearing it because they're protesting something? Is this person about to rob a bank? I think it seems very hard to enforce.
Well, it certainly does. And so what I understand, the exceptions to this law are going to be, one, as you alluded to, if you are wearing it for a medical reason or if there's a religious reason behind it. But with this law, is it only wearing a mask while protesting that's prohibited? Can I just walk around with a mask on a regular basis if I want to?
We just don't know because we haven't seen a law like this across the country. But the thought is, yeah, you should be able to walk around because this was a raucous meeting last night, Frank. There were tons of people who showed up screaming, yelling. One person was arrested during this. Some people saying, how can you tell us to take off our masks? There's plenty of people, post-pandemic who feel like their lives were saved by those masks. And they say that they're health compromised now, and that's why they continue to wear them. And we've seen this COVID variant come back.
Well, that
over
would
the
qualify
summer.
as medical, right?
Yes. But the question is, these people are worried that they're going to be stopped for wearing a mask, and they say that's not right. They should be able to do whatever they want. So we go from the mandatory mask to the mandatory take off your mask.
What surprised me a little bit is the 11 Democrats in the Nassau County legislature that abstained from this, because recently, in the last couple of months, since a lot of the anti-Israel protests have ramped up, where you see all these masked people, in some cases being very aggressive in terms of trying to potentially intimidate people, Governor Kathy Hochul came out and said that protesters shouldn't be wearing masks. So I know that Bruce Blakeman is a Republican and he pushed this locally, but Hochul said she wants to do this statewide. So I was curious as to why the Democrats in the Nassau legislature weren't following Hochul's lead on
Yeah,
this.
well, I think the thought is on the part of the statewide rule. There's just not enforceable. It's, you're giving police another job to do that is almost, in some levels, very hard to figure out, that they're going to have to sort of look at each situation, figure out whether someone's wearing a mask or not. And at the end of the day, most people don't care.
Right. Well, and Blakeman has also this army of volunteer armed bandits that are willing to enforce whatever he's wanting to do anyway. So maybe they'll be able to participate and help being the mask police.
Yeah,
but it
well,
remains to be seen.
Democrats will tell you on Long Island that he's passed all these, sort of, I guess, controversial bills to heighten his profile across the state and maybe across the country, for that matter, because a lot of times when these bills are signed, we see them the next day on Fox News.
Yeah, well, I don't think only Democrats are saying that. If you're just tuning in, I'm Frank Morano. You're listening to The Other Side of Midnight, talking about the news with Noam Laden.
This is one that has journalists upset. Sometimes as journalists, we're given a story and then we're given an embargo on the story. So they'll hand us a story and they'll say, listen, I'm giving you this information. You can be the first to go with it, but you have to hold on until 8:40 a.m. Monday morning. And most people will follow that because they want to get the next story, potentially from whoever that source is. Well, Bloomberg News really upset at its White House correspondent, Jennifer Jacobs, over the fact that she broke the news last week that Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich had been freed by Russia in this major prisoner swap. Now, you would say, why is Bloomberg upset that their own reporter broke the story? And they did. She was by far way ahead of the pack, and we went with it because she's pretty reliable. And it comes to blow that that she was told, just like reporters around the world, by the way, who were handed this story as well, that they had to wait until 7:40 on Thursday morning to reveal this deal because they were worried it might sink the transfer of these prisoners. And sure enough, she went with it early, and it was before the actual swap had taken place. And she even reported that these prisoners who had been swapped were actually en route on their way back home. And it ends up that wasn't true either. And so now the Bloomberg News says they're going to let her go. A longtime reporter. She's been 8 years. Pretty solid reporter, by the way. They don't know why she would break this embargo. Usually it's pretty clear. They'll say, hey, this is the reason we're telling you not to do this. And in this case, they said the reason they were putting this embargo down was that it could endanger the lives of the people who are about to be freed.
I completely agree with the Bloomberg decision to fire this reporter, and unless there's some major misunderstanding which hasn't been reported, she really did put the freedom and the lives of these people in jeopardy. I mean, this was such a sensitive thing. The fact that she was privileged to get this information before it actually happened, and the only thing she had to do was wait until these people landed in the United States before reporting it, and she couldn't even do that. I think Bloomberg is absolutely right to let her go.
Yeah, well, it looks like she's gonna. It wasn't officially her last day yesterday, but it looks like her official last day is coming very soon.
Yeah, well, Bloomberg was going to be on my denunciation list for their handling of this story this week, but given the fact that they are taking the appropriate corrective actions, it looks like they may have dodged a denunciation.
Wow, I imagine they're all relieved over it. Bloomberg now,
no doubt
that they're not on that list.
Exactly.
Have you been watching the Olympics?
Very little.
Okay. Well, this is a viral moment, and I have to be careful how I tell this story, but it is a great story. So a pole vaulter, a French pole vaulter, his name is Anthony Emirati. He's at the games in Paris on Saturday, and the 21-year-old was attempting to clear a bar, and looked like he had cleared it. And it would have been a big moment for him because it would have pushed him up into the rankings high up and maybe potentially a medal of some sorts. But as he makes that final move, you know how pole vaulters are. They contort their body at that final moment and they just make it over the bar. Well, as he was just about to make it over the bar, his private part hit this bar and knocked it off into the ground. And so then he plummeted back into the low numbers and no longer was in medal contention. And that moment has been watched millions of times. People have taken the moment when he contorts his body and his private part knocks the pole off this moment and have played it over and over and over again. You can watch it if you go online. They've slowed it down. Of course, all kinds of reaction around the world. Some people saying, okay, he did not win a medal, but he won a medal in another way. He's even laughing about it. He says he knows that this video is going to be used in so many different memes if it already hasn't been. And he says, okay, ladies, look what I did.
That's very funny.
Yeah, on the pole vault.
My wife showed me this clip, and it did look like he was in a little bit of pain, at least initially, with this. I don't understand why they don't have some sort of protective gear down there to avoid something like that happening.
Maybe it has something to do with just the, getting up there and being able to get over the bar. You can't have anything
but
there.
I'm glad he has a sense of humor about it, but I could definitely see this working in the long term to his benefit because he's going to have more name recognition and opportunities, some tawdry, some not so tawdry, to do all sorts of things that whoever wins this pole vaulting competition is never going to have.
No, we don't know who won. I mean, somebody won,
exactly.
And I don't know who their person is.
Some adult website or something, I think, offered him $250,000 already to do something. Now, I don't know that he'll take that, but the fact that he's going to have these offers, the thing that is universally true of the 21st century in America especially, but I think all over the world, is that whether it's good or bad, there's no amount of name recognition that is not going to give you an opportunity to earn some money.
Of course.
Eric Adams, I'm not friends with Eric Adams, but I've hung out with him a couple of times. And one of the things that I said to him is, I hope you don't get too upset when I give you a hard time on the radio. And he said instantly, without thinking about it, clearly he really believes this. He says, look, gotta say what you gotta say. The only bad press is the obituary page. And I think that's certainly true of this particular pole vaulter.
No two ways about it. You want one more?
Yeah, sure.
No? Okay. Craig Davis. Craig Davis is much like you, Frank Morano. He works the overnight shift here in New York.
I was waiting to hear handsome. I was waiting to hear.
Yes, he's incredibly handsome, wealthy. The ladies love him.
Okay,
man, he's incredible when it comes to the pole. Pole. So anyway, he is what is in New York just so many buildings across New York. A lot of people outside of New York may not know this, but if you live here in Manhattan, there's a good chance if you have a little cash in your pocket that you live in a building that has 24-hour doormen that pick up your laundry, that take in your packages, that help you up to your apartment if you need it, do whatever you want them to do. Well, he is now 31 years of doing the overnight shift on an Upper West Side building from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. He says it's a lifestyle that he loves. He says he goes home and it's probably a very similar schedule to you.
Yeah, he's probably listening to us right now.
He may be. I don't know if he's allowed to have a radio at this front desk. I'll reach out to him today and see if he can. He said, I sleep 6-7 hours a day. Then I get up and I do it all over again. And he talks about the fact that he has seen so many things over the years in this building that has some high wealth clientele. He says, I am the keeper of secrets like nobody.
Sure, I bet.
Imagine all the people that have been snuck into this building in the overnight hours as he watched on, and he's kept quiet. He says what's interesting is that he really in some ways does not know all the people who live in this building because he's the overnight guy.
They
There's
come
people
during
he
the day,
never
sure.
sees. He says during the pandemic, he was a guy who kept people company because people felt initially when people were really locked in their homes, they would call him just to have a conversation with them. They'd come down into the lobby with their mask on to have a conversation with them. He said he was happy to keep them company. He says he loves the overnight shift. He says he'll never sell the secrets of the people who live in the building. And he says he has some whoppers, including famous people who have been snuck into the building in the overnight by, that were in illicit affairs that are going on. Right. Yeah.
But so why are we talking about it?
Oh, because he is being celebrated 31 years on the overnight.
Oh.
There's not any other doorman we could find in the city that have done that many years in the overnight. Usually, if you're the overnight guy, your ambition is to get to the daytime.
Right.
He says he has no interest in doing that. He loves the overnight shift.
I love this guy. He is like me because people always say that to me privately. Say, when are you going to get a shift during the day? I said, no.
I don't want one.
I'm very content here. Just leave me alone. Let me do my little thing here. So I'm happy to hear that from Mr. Davis. Congratulations to you. By the way, if you are a doorman and you have been serving for longer than 31 years, give us a call right now at 646-720-0635, and we will tear up this piece of paper that we are sending over to Mr. Davis as a commendation.
Can I give you an update?
Yes.
There are now 3 flies in the coffee. So one of the ones that was hanging on the outside of the cup apparently has fallen in and is no longer with us.
Boom. So you see, that's that rubbing alcohol that I put in that sugar coffee solution.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Noam.
Sure. And now you know the rest of the story.
You see this, Matt? See what we're doing here? This is impressive stuff.
The new Morano method.
That's right. All right. 646-720-0635. 646-720-0635. Hey, by the way, I am on Twitter as well, at Frank Morano. It's Frank Morano. I now have over 10,000 followers on Twitter, so I must be tweeting something interesting. You know, it's so funny. I never know what tweets are going to go viral. I don't understand the Twitter algorithm at all. And I made a tweet yesterday about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. It was pretty innocuous, but it was supportive. For some reason, the Twitter algorithm fed this out to every Robert F. Kennedy Jr. supporter in the world. It's now been viewed over 12,000 times. And now there's nothing special about it. And yet I have other tweets that I spend time thinking about or witty or whatever else. And they're viewed by a couple hundred people, 12,000 or 1,200 people. I can't understand for the life of me why this one has gotten so many views. But if you want to see what all the fuss is about, you can join the Twitter party at Frank Morano. I did, it's funny. I was sitting on my front porch yesterday. I was doing some work and listening to the radio. So I've got my Bose radio, solar powered radio out there. And then my son came out and he's got a toy radio and he put it next to my radio. And so you can see we did a photo comparison of our two radios back to back. That's on Twitter at Frank Morano. So I was just to finish the last thing that I was going to say on the pro wrestling situation. I did watch a bit of SummerSlam on Sunday, and they had as the opening performer Jelly Roll, who I think is really, really talented. This guy is everywhere now. I'm not sure if you've seen him, but he's a younger guy. And when I say younger, he's in his 30s. The older you get, everybody becomes a younger guy. But he is very heavy set. He's got tattoos on his face, on his arms. He looks very much like a street guy, right? If you didn't know that he was a performer, you could easily think that he was somebody that was in a tough spot. And apparently he has been in a tough spot. He's battled addiction. He's lost a lot of friends to drug abuse and things of that nature. And that's apparently what a lot of his songs are about. And I think he's very good. And he performed, I think he did the national anthem, but then he performed one of his songs, a song called Liar, which I thought was interesting. He got involved in the wrestling show itself. And it's funny, Sheila, one of the women that we shared this house in Cape May with last week, was telling me this story, which I hadn't heard before, about Jelly Roll, just coincidentally. And she said that Jelly Roll, who again is dressed kind of slovenly, he's got weird tattoos, doesn't look like a matinee idol, to say the least. He goes to this diner or something, and he's ordering breakfast. And one of the other diners, now this is just 3 weeks ago, the guy's won Grammys, the guy's a millionaire, right? He's one of the best-selling recording artists in the country. A guy is at the diner, and Jelly Roll is just sitting there by himself, having breakfast, eating by himself, no entourage, no friends, by himself. And another guy's at the diner, and he tells the waitress, hey, that guy over there, whatever he wants, it's on me. So he thought he was homeless or something, having a tough time. And sure enough, he didn't know that he was a millionaire, multiple Grammy winner. And Jelly Roll ultimately told him, you don't have to do that. That's very nice. So I've been having some fun with that because I texted this Cape May group chat that we're on when Jelly Roll was at SummerSlam performing. I said, Jelly Roll is performing at SummerSlam. The wrestlers all think he's homeless and they all are offering him money. And then he turned out to be on CBS Sunday Morning as well on Sunday, where he gave a very good interview. So I thought, I'm a fan of Jelly Roll and his work. Do you listen to his music, Matt?
No, I mean, I know who he is. And I guess that was the song for SummerSlam, the song Liar.
Right.
And he got involved with The Miz and R-Truth.
That was cool.
The John Cena move to... I think it was Austin Theory. It was kind of funny.
Yeah, you could tell he was really into it. There are some celebrities that they show up at a wrestling event and you could tell they're not into it. You could tell this guy was really into it. He was doing his thing.
He's been there before. That wasn't his first time making an appearance. He's been there a few times.
I didn't realize that. Okay, so that's that. Anyway, on a sadder note, when it comes to pro wrestling, do you remember Bob Backlund? Bob Backlund, it was an incredible performer in the 70s and 80s. In the late 70s and early 80s, he was the guy. He had a championship reign that, to this day, is one of the longest in history. And he was very much an all-American, a younger guy back then. And then ultimately, when Vincent McMahon's father sold the business to his son, he made the decision they wanted to go in a different direction, and they were going to make Hulk Hogan the champion and usher in this new era of Hulkamania and all the whole everything that came with it in the 80s, and it worked for them. But Bob Backlund was not going to be a part of that. Bob Backlund, always looked a lot kind of like Howdy Doody and was very almost corny. He was not a rock star. He was not a celebrity. He was a guy that would work out, didn't look like he used steroids, but would go and then drink milk and eat vegetables. And this was true. And he was, I guess, in his about 30 at the time. He would make children who asked for his autograph name all the state capitals or name all the presidents of the United States. So anyway, he wouldn't give up the title directly to Hulk Hogan. So he gave it to the Iron Sheik. He agreed to drop it to the Iron Sheik because the Iron Sheik was a real athlete. He was an Olympian. And then the Iron Sheik, just a couple of months later, if that, dropped the belt to Hulk Hogan. But anyway, then he was a huge star in the late 70s, early 80s, right before the WWF blew up. In fact, here is Bob Backlund in 1980 in a promo before a Madison Square Garden match.
Guest referee will be Pat Patterson. We'd like to know how you feel about the events of the previous contest and what you're looking forward to in the upcoming.
Well, I want to assure to all the fans out there that I did not push that, I did not run into the referee. No, I didn't. Ken Patera was throwing me off of the headlock I had on him, and I did hit the referee. Now, I don't know if Ken Patera threw me into the referee or not on purpose, but he did throw me off.
All right. Well, Pat Patterson is the guest referee. How do you feel about it?
Well, I'm taking him for his word, then. If his word is good, it's okay. He's going to call it right down the line, and that's good. That's the way I want it.
So basically, he was not happy with the direction the wrestling business was going, not happy with the direction WWF was going, and he basically leaves at pretty much the height of his career. Not quite the height, but almost the height. Leaves. As a young man, does other things. I think he coached wrestling at a high school, did some other things. It would make an occasional appearance on the independent circuit. And then in 1992, after about 8 years away, makes a comeback and did some interesting things. At this point, the company that he came back to was totally different, had all sorts of colorful characters, a totally different company. And ultimately, he does this gimmick that ultimately works. He comes back initially as the All-American guy, and then he snaps and goes crazy. And that really was a very successful angle that he worked well into his 40s. And then he ends up running for Congress as a Republican, and a lot of you in Connecticut may have actually voted for him in the year 2000. See, after Jesse Ventura got elected governor, you had all these wrestlers try to run for office. And in 2000, Bob Backlund was one who ran for office as a Republican in Connecticut, did not win. But anyway, just yesterday, it was revealed that Backlund has been battling dementia. And you know what? I knew something was up with him because I've been trying to reach out to him, and I have gotten nowhere in reaching out to him. And all of his old websites and everything have been taken down. And I wondered what was up with him. So that's what's up. He's battling dementia. So I mentioned that because Bob Backlund, whether you're a fan of wrestling in the 70s, the 80s, or the 90s, you know who Bob Backlund is. And it's a real shame because very, very smart guy. Although everyone said he was always kind of a weird guy, but such a shame. And from Minnesota originally. Shout out to our listeners on WCCO in Minnesota. But that's what's going on with Bob Backlund. That's the latest. 15 seconds of fame straight ahead.
The Other Side of Midnight. It's The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
When the lights go down and your dreams go wrong, in the darkness you might need a place to hide. If the days are long, when the sun goes down, you might need a place to call your own. Somewhere out there on the other side of midnight, you might hear a voice of reason in the grind. Somewhere out there on the other side of midnight, you might hear it in your dreams.
Ah, yes, Stevie G and the Lovely Prisoners singing The Other Side of Midnight, an instant classic. And a newer version of the song is available on the YouTube, so you can check that out. It's definitely worth listening to. All right, now is your opportunity to be heard for 15 seconds. All you have to do is dial 646-720-0635, 646-720-0635, and be part of
The Other Side of Midnight. This is 15 Seconds of Fame.
Mike!
Morning, Frank. It's tough when one pole affects the outcome of the other pole. Maybe that French pole vaulter should have taken a dip in a cold pool before his event. Sometimes shrinkage is good.
Neil!
I'm able to sleep. I'm able to watch TV. Frankie, go back on vacation. Please, do it for me.
Roger.
You know, there's a folk song entitled English is Crazy. And one of the questions it puts to us is, if vegetarians eat vegetables, what do humanitarians eat?
Raji. Tony.
Chicken jerk off.
Larry.
Frank, you shouldn't let Noam Laden use this show to burnish his liberal image. Do you know how many vile expressions there are behind masks that people use behind masks? He is so shallow for trying to criticize that law.
Rusty.
Yeah, you don't want to talk about the Trump assassination attempt? What are you, really biased? I can't believe you talk about wrestling. That stupid baloney stuff.
Johnny.
All right, as far as your fly problem, just hang a sticky strip. That's number one. Number two.
Frank Morano, good day.